Well, hello there, everybody. We are live, and we are back with a brand new edition of On to the Next One. The matchmaking hats are back on following a wild UFC 270 event last night, Saturday, perhaps, if you're hearing this on the podcast network, in Salt Lake City, Utah. We have a brand new UFC welterweight champion. We have a lot of questions in the middleweight division. We have another bantamweight in the championship conversation. A lot to unpack from a matchmaking perspective. Thank you for joining us after a crazy night. I am Mike Heck, and as you can see, my best friend, A.K. Lee, is not here. So joining me in his place this week, a very special guest, Mr. No Gray Area, Mr. Hot Take. He's my friend and yours, and probably just as tired as we all are who are a part of the show right now. Mr. Jed Meshew, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Mike. You know, I gotta say, I'm showing up on this show a lot these days. And I think I'm getting better at it, but I'm not very good for this one. I don't respect to you and AK. I have no idea how you guys do this every pay-per-view. Because it's both difficult and I went to bed like 2 hours ago. So it is, but we're going to have some fun. I don't think I have any good answers today, which is unfortunate, but hopefully you guys are bringing better ones than I have.
Well, we're going to have some fun with this as always. And for those watching live with us, if you want to throw some matchmaking ideas at us in terms of specific fights that we're talking about, feel free. Otherwise, at the end, we'll get to all of your suggestions. We'll open it up. We'll just throw all your suggestions up here. We will react to them. And we'll react to some of the DMs that some of you may have sent as well. Not all, but we'll get to as many as we can. And we'll have some fun for the next hour or so. So let's start with the main event, Jed. This one is a bit easier than we thought it might be halfway through the fifth round of this fight. But Leon Edwards knocks out Kamaru Usman in the final minute. It was one of those, hey, why do you watch MMA? That's why mofo moments. And less than 60 seconds away from losing a 49-46 unanimous decision, Edwards lands a kick to the head of Kamaru Usman, knocks him stiff right there and then in the middle of the cage, a walk-off KO for the ages. And the man who has paid his dues for nearly 8 years in the UFC, and quite frankly, his whole life out of the cage, unbeaten for 7 years since Usman beat him the first time they fought on the way up, Rocky Edwards is a UFC world champion. We talked a lot about this on the post-fight show. It seems like the trilogy fight is next, that it has to be in London. Seems like the obvious choice, but quite frankly, if Usman decides to take some time off or needs to reflect on anything, it's not the only choice. So is it the trilogy in your eyes, or are you pinpointing something else here?
It's the trilogy, Mike. I mean, as long as Usman wants it, and you know me, I hate immediate rematches. I am staunchly opposed to them, but this is a trilogy, which I feel a little bit better about doing an immediate rematch when it's a trilogy. I mean, Usman I guess it's one of those things. It maybe wouldn't be the choice I had if I had full control. But it's certainly the thing that is going to happen, and I think makes a ton of sense to do it, especially, like you said, it has to happen in London. Like, there's just no two ways about it. The UFC has lately not been, COVID took some of this, right? But a lot of times champions haven't been given the opportunity to defend in front of a home crowd. Charles Oliveira jumps to mind. But you got to go to London for Leon. Like, you just have to do that.
The only person who can prevent this from happening probably in the next 6 to 7 months is Kamaru Usman if he decides to take a break. And let's be clear and put this out there, because this doesn't get talked about enough. This man has fought double the amount of fights of Leon Edwards since the first Colby Covington fight. He's been the most active champion over the last 2 years and change. And if he wants to take some more time to spend with his daughter, his family, and do whatever, he has absolutely earned that right. And the second he is ready to come back, he will get a title fight. I don't think he will do that. So ultimately, first quarter 2023, we get the rematch for the belt in London. Hopefully they can do it at Wembley. And apparently throughout all the talk last night, there's apparently a retractable roof on Wembley Stadium these days. So there you go. And this is just a really fascinating fight now. But let me ask you this before we move on, because if Khamzat Chimaev beats Nate Diaz in a little less than 3 weeks' time, and Usman does take time off, maybe doesn't fight until like the middle or end of next year, what do you think the UFC is going to do? Do you think they'll go with Edward Chimaev, or, and I know I might get some eye rolls here, but this is a very strong possibility if Usman takes time off, Leon Edwards versus Jorge Masvidal, which, by the way, for a guy that hadn't earned a ton of hype from fans outside of the UK really at all during this run, and you've been sort of driving the train here when it comes to no one really is all that interested in Leon Edwards, he's in a pretty damn good spot right now, isn't he? Because his next fight, no matter what happens, is going to be massive any way you look at it.
Well, it's always a good spot to win the welterweight championship of the world. So yes, I would say it's a very good spot. Yeah, man. I think if Kamaru wants to take an extended time off, I think the UFC is probably just going to hold anyway, even with Khamzat. I was a bit surprised they didn't just let Khamzat leapfrog Leon. Now he's fighting Nate, ostensibly to set him up for a title fight, but kind of think they're gonna ice him if that's the case. Like just hang tight unless Leon is like, because here's the thing, if it's all down to Leon, right? Because if Usman wants to take some time to recover, etc., Leon has the choice. Does he want to fight again or not? And if he comes to the UFC and is like, I want to fight, I just don't think that I spent some time thinking about it last night. I don't think they pull the trigger on the Masvidal fight. It's a fight that makes sense from a narrative perspective. It's really tough to sell Masvidal having lost 3 in a row and getting a title fight, even with the narrative here, especially with Khamzat looming. So if Leon says, I want to fight before then, I think he has to fight Khamzat. So I think if Usman wants to sit out, Leon's going to sit out right there with him and do, a Wembley show against Usman, which would be enormous. And he should. Like, that's what he should do.
Yep, I completely agree. We talked about, I know some people are asking who we think wins the rematch. I think right now we're both kind of on the Leon Edwards side of things, but the build to the fight could change minds. Who knows? But I want to ask you from a betting perspective, what do you think the opening betting line is? I don't know if it's dropped yet, but do you think Usman opens as a pretty sizable favorite?
I think he opens as a favorite, but it's pretty close. Just because this line was relatively close. I mean, I got Edwards last night right at close at like plus 315 or something like that. He stayed pretty steady around plus 285-ish all week, and then fight night a little more money came in on Usman. So Usman would have closed around minus 400 for 4 and change. I think he's probably minus 200 just because of the tenor of that fight, right? Usman was winning the fight very comfortably until he wasn't. So I think Usman would still be the favorite, but I think it is closer, minus 220, maybe minus 250.
I'm trying to see here because it does look like a line has dropped.
Really?
BetMGM dropped a line. Usman a minus 375 favorite right now.
That can't possibly be right.
That's what the futures. I'm looking at best fight odds right now. That's what the futures are saying. So I don't know. We'll figure that out. I'm sure we'll have some more. We'll have other lines dropping at this point, but we'll see, man. That was quite a performance. And Leon Edwards, what a difference a freaking kick to the face makes, because now he's in a really good spot. So that's the main event. Let's go to the co-main event. Paulo Costa defeats Luke Rockhold in a fight that, no matter how you look at it, it's likely going to be on our fight of the year list at the end of the year. What a crazy ass fight that was. But these next two, I guess, selections are going to be kind of interesting, Jed. So let's start with Paulo Costa. Let's start with the eraser, because he said on Wednesday that this is the last fight on his deal. And then at the post-fight press conference last night, he sort of walked that back a little bit and said maybe he has another fight. So not really sure what's going to go on here. But I would say if you had your druthers, you're not giving him a UFC opponent next, are you?
For the sake of it, I wrote one down just because I didn't really know how we're supposed to handle that on the show. But no, my number one opponent for Paulo Costa is Antonio Carlos Jr., who listeners may recognize is in the PFL, because I think, assuming Paulo Costa is in fact no longer under contract, I think he should go to the PFL. I think he should go to the PFL's light heavyweight division. I think he should win $1 million American dollars, because Shane Burgos is going to do it. It's a great choice for him. I don't remember who is in the light heavyweight tournament for them right now. But Amar Akhmedov maybe is still going. But I said it on BTL this week. I've said it a lot lately. The heavyweight, I mean, Paulo Costa could do it at heavyweight if he wants to do that, because Ante Delija is fighting Mateus Scheffel for $1 million in the heavyweight tournament. And I think Paulo Costa should do that, because $1 million is a lot of money.
Yeah, I see these comments a lot. Why would you ever tell someone to leave the UFC? That's like someone playing in the NFL wants to go to the minors. That's absolutely false.
What
Because
minors?
yeah, I mean, listen, is the
You're
PFL as
mixing
big
metaphors.
as I mean, listen, is the PFL as big as the UFC? Absolutely not. But do they have a lot of money to throw around? I mean, look at Shane Burgos. Shane Burgos is making way more money than he would be in the UFC. And by the way, the path to $1 million on top of the, I'm sure, 6-figure plus deal he would get signing with the PFL for each fight, it's hard to turn that down. So I don't understand why that's such a bad thing when your path to a title and your path to a lot of money. I'm not gonna, I mean, it's fighting, so it's not like it's quote unquote easier, but it's a much better situation for him and for a lot of people in his situation, because he's not fighting for a title in the UFC unless Alex Pereira bolts Israel Adesanya twice and Costa wins like another couple of fights, because it's not easy to erase, no pun intended, what happened in the title fight with Adesanya. So it's still a long road for him to get to a title fight. So I don't know, man. Like him being a free agent, which is not 100% done yet, it's an interesting, fun story.
I mean, it is, just because he's, no disrespect to Shane Burgos, Paulo Costa is the best free agent. And look, if people, look, if you're just going to be one of those guys who's standing everything the UFC does, cool. But I don't know. Gilbert Arenas got like a shitload of money to go play basketball in China, and he could have hung around the league and was like, no, I'm going to go get this paycheck instead of ride the bench over here, because you should. For the gentleman who made the comment, I don't remember your name. I don't know what you do for a living, but if somebody out there is willing to pay you a substantially more monies to do that or something similar, you should do that, because that's the point of jobs, is to get the most money you can for your skills and services. And Paulo Costa can get the most money possible, not in the UFC. That's just where he's at right now.
Completely agree. Now, if I'm going to make a UFC fight, if he does have one more fight, I like the winner of the Sean Strickland Jared Cannonier fight. That makes sense. But if he is a free agent right now, I don't think his next fight is going to be the UFC, because he's talked about wanting to box. Like Triller does weird, wacky things. So I could see Triller just throwing him a bunch of money to do weird, wacky things. Maybe he's on a Jake Paul card or something. Like maybe he doesn't fight Jake Paul right away, but maybe he gets on an undercard or something. But he could also go to Bellator. I'm sure Bellator would pay him. PFL would definitely pay him. And, like you said, and like we've been talking about, if I'm Ray Sefo and company, the second they can communicate with Paulo Costa, I'm picking up the telephone with his girlfriend, calling his girlfriend and extending a big money offer, because he could fight at 85. He could fight at 205. He could just be on the pay-per-view card. So if I'm Paulo Costa and I'm a free agent, PFL is definitely an option. It's probably up top. So now here's where things get real interesting, because we have Luke Rockhold at the end of the fight. He takes his gloves off, says he's retiring. It certainly seems like he retired, but we've heard this song before, and he said he's effing old, and it appears that he's done. So are you willing to matchmake for him here?
Oh yeah. I have a name down. I will also say that if just to put a bow on Rockhold, if Rockhold does stay in the UFC for whatever reason, I thought about the Strickland one, the winner of that fight, like you said. But I just went with Andre Muniz, because Andre Muniz deserves a chance to fight up in the rankings, and everybody else is busy. So I was like, yeah, make him fight Andre Muniz. But yeah, I'm totally happy to matchmake for Rockhold. I think it's probably close to 50-50 we see him again. Just because we talked about it in the post show. That was the strangest possible outcome, I think, for that fight, because
Yeah.
in our pre-show talks, I certainly believed, and I think a lot of people did, or maybe the majority of humans, I would guess, thought that if Rockhold won, okay, Rockhold when he's back. But if he loses, it's going to be the same way he's been losing, which is he's going to get punched in the face with the left hook and he's going to fold up like a lawn chair. But he didn't. He showed a lot of grit, a lot of heart, two characteristics that, frankly, Rockhold has never really been known for in his career. And it was the very strange situation where I don't think he needs to retire off that, right? Like he didn't go. It was not a Luke just doesn't have it anymore. He came in off a 3-year layoff in a weird situation at altitude in a style matchup that probably wasn't the best for him anyway, and really held his own. Like, I'm not saying he won any round of that fight, but he was very competitive at moments, and I don't think that is not a performance that makes me go, man, Luke Rockhold just wash, needs to hang it up. So I think there's a real world where a lot of that was the emotion in the moment. He's been through a bunch. He took another loss in a really hard fought battle that he obviously looked at times like he just wanted to leave because he couldn't breathe. But I think there's a real chance he goes home. He talks to DC later, and kind of realizes, oh, I lost, but I have more to give, and I would like to do it. And if that happens, I think there's only one fight, and it's Chris Weidman. There was a time when everyone thought those two dudes were gonna have a trilogy of incredible middleweight title fights, and that obviously didn't happen. But Weidman, coming off the big horrific injury, should be ready to go by next year. And I think that fight makes way too much sense for both guys.
So on the post-fight show, I teased the only thing in my eyes that I think would get Luke Rockhold back in there. I honestly got the feeling he was done, like that he really didn't have much more to prove. But the only thing that gets him out of there, I said this is 95%, he's done.
You did.
But there's 5%, which is a little higher than it should be. And you might look at me and you might attack me in these comments, and I don't give a shit. But here's the thing. I think he's done unless they offer him a title fight, which I still don't think is out of the realm of possibility. If Adesanya beats Pereira and he wants to fight Luke Rockhold, if he comes on and says, hey, Luke, I enjoyed the fight, I need this name on the resume, and he has mentioned Luke Rockhold's name before, I am not slamming the door on this idea at all, because Yoel Romero got a title fight after losing 2 straight and 3 out of 4. And I know you don't feel like he lost those 2 fights, but in the record books, those are losses. And the fight after he lost to Paulo Costa, he got a title fight in a ridiculously fun fight. So some of you might think I'm absolutely insane, but look at this damn division. Like, who else is there? Maybe if Sean Strickland beats Jared Cannonier, he could talk himself into a title fight. That's a tough matchup for him.
Yeah,
I'm just saying I'm just saying it is not completely outrageous that this could happen, but I think he's done unless that's an option. Like, that's in my eyes, that's the only thing that gets him back. And it's all up to Adesanya to say, hey, I want to fight you, Luke Rockhold. Like, I can't have my resume complete without your name on it as a former champion, which he's done before, and he's gotten his wish. So it's not crazy.
I don't think it's crazy. I don't think it's likely. But no,
I don't either.
There's definitely, I 100% agree. Luke Rockhold for sure absolutely accepts that, should that somehow come down the pipe for him. But I think it's very unlikely. I just think that I think Rockhold absolutely last night felt that he was retired. I am not sure how he will feel in a month or 2 months, because he's done similar. He has had similar vibes before, and then life comes at you. A good rule of thumb for everybody watching: is that if a fighter retires, don't believe them, because this is MMA and they never stay retired. Like ever, ever, ever. Chuck Liddell came back after 10 years because that's how this sport is. So I am just going to assume we see him back at some point, or at least that it's a 50-50 proposition.
We'll see what happens. We'll see. Time heals all wounds, and maybe he does come back and fight Chris Weidman, which I'd be absolutely down to watch, especially with Weidman wanting to come back at the end of the year, early next year. But we'll see. I know you don't want to talk about this, but we have to. Merab Dvalishvili gets the win over José Aldo. The fight, let's be honest, it didn't live up to the hype. I'm not being a hater. I'm just being a realist. I thought Aldo clearly won the first round. The 30-27 scorecard was junk. The second was real close. I usually go back and watch things if I have questions, but I didn't have time this morning. But I mean, I could see it both ways. I know you and Casey both believe that José won the second round. There wasn't much to really score there, but I could definitely see it both ways. And Merab just did it all in the third. It was a clear third round for him. Huge win for Merab. Like I said, I'm sure this one hurts your soul to talk about, but do you have a pick here, or which I would understand the latter? Is this a wait and see for you?
I have a pick. I will say that I did rewatch it just because I believe that the correct true score to that fight is a 28-28 draw, or 28, 29, 29. I don't, however it is. Round 2 should have been a draw. Because the same stuff I said in the post fight, like you're right, there's not a ton to score. It's not like Aldo did a lot, but I fundamentally do not believe we should reward wall install. And watch that fight and look at the differences between rounds 2 and 3, and that is the difference between effective aggression and wall install. Because in round 3, Merab absolutely, who's using the same overall like strategy, but his tactics are very different, and he actively like attempted to do stuff. Also, I previously stated who did Chris Curtis fight the time before last?
Adolfo Vieira.
Yeah. I made a rule during that fight that if once you fail on 10 takedown attempts in a row, you automatically lose the fight, because we shouldn't reward spamming takedowns infinitely into the wind because you don't have an effective strategy outside of doing this one thing and the other guy's not allowing it. And so by that metric, Aldo certainly wins because Merab failed infinitely in his takedown attempts. But I think that fight should just be a draw. I think we should be much more comfortable scoring rounds where nothing definitive happened in favor of a tie, because it's very stupid that Merab wins the second round for holding. And it's similarly, it would be dumb for Aldo to win that fight for being held like that round. So, but that's just me and my sour grapes. I think Merab it's an either or. I don't know how that is treated here, frankly, but if Petr Yan beats Sean O'Malley, you do Petr Yan versus Merab Dvalishvili. If he does not, then you do Merab Dvalishvili versus Chito Vera, because if Yan loses, then O'Malley's getting the title fight, and so then Merab gets to fight Chito because O'Malley's going to be held up either with Sterling or Dillashaw. So yeah, it's mostly wait and see, but I think that's the fight largely just depends on what happens with Petr Yan, Sean O'Malley.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you there.
Why Ashley saying takedowns sure do take effort. So does swinging and missing. I don't like, why are we rewarding things that take effort? Like it's effective offense and holding a man against the cage, and conversely being held against the cage. Neither of those are effective by any realistic measure. I said it last night. Again, I understand why people scored it for him, and I don't take issue with it. I'm not like, this is a robbery, but it's just fundamentally stupid for the sport to think that matters.
And for those wondering what the actual numbers were, according to UFC stats, Merab Dvalishvili was 0 for 16 officially on takedowns. 0 for 16. So, I mean, we knew that the takedown defense would hold up, but listen,
Yeah, I mean, he looked
Merab,
really good defending takedowns. That was hell of an effort.
To me, and I said this in the post-fight show, Marlon Vera is the biggest winner in this whole thing. He is the top guy right now. And I'm with you. If Petr Yan beats Sean O'Malley, Cheeto is getting a title shot. So I'm going to try and predict the future here and say that Petr Yan does beat Sean O'Malley. I think it's a more interesting fight and it's a closer fight than a lot of people think it's going to be, especially the first 5 minutes of it. But I think Yan will ultimately win the fight, and then he will fight Merab because there's no way O'Malley is fighting Merab no matter what happens in that fight. So that's my pick. I'll just try to predict the future, and there you go. Now, for José Aldo, this is one of those things where it just depends on if he's got a really bad taste in his mouth that he wants to get rid of very quickly and just how long he wants to take off. But I mean, at this point, I have to go with Dominic Cruz because timelines match up more than likely. Like if they did Dominic Cruz versus Frankie Edgar at MSG, I would have no complaints about that. That's a fight I really want to see. And if we can only get one, I'm going to go with Cruz Aldo because I just think that's a consistent fight on everybody's list where it's like we have to see these two fight each other before one or both move on with their fighting career. So I'll go with Dominic Cruz. I don't know if we'll get it at the end of the year, but maybe early next year. But I think that's the fight that will ultimately happen.
That's the low-hanging fruit. It's not the one I went for because I know that this is me being a hater. So feel free to flame me in the comments. I would not mind seeing that fight. I have never and will never feel that is a fight that I needed to see, that we would have missed out if it didn't happen, because at no point during their respective title runs was I like, Dominic Cruz, he's going to be an interesting dude if he moves up to 145. It's like José Aldo will absolutely demolish that weird dancing guy. And so it's just never a fight that is sung to me. Whereas I am genuinely interested in Cruz Edgar, and with Edgar on his way out, like this is his last fight. Like that is the fight I want. I think the last time I was on the show, that is the fight I called for. And so because of that, as AK often says, I've already predicted one. I'm going to stick to my guns there. And the other part is Aldo's number 3 in the UFC bantamweight rankings. That'll change with Dvalishvili, but it'll probably drop to 4. Like Cruz is not in the same realm after his loss. I wouldn't at least put him. And so give me Aldo versus the loser of Corey Sandhagen, Song Yadong coming up. I think that's a fair rebound fight, but I wouldn't have an issue with the Dom Cruz fight. I would just rather see Cruz fight Frankie.
Yeah, I mean, there's no wrong answer here.
Yeah. Also, the Cruz Aldo fight, like there is literally one moment in time for the Frankie Cruz fight. It is right now because Frankie is retiring. So you got if whatever the last fight you want for Frankie has to happen right now. And I don't care about Frankie fighting Ricky Simone or whoever the hell they might put on that. Like that's the only fight that makes sense for Frankie at all, as far as I'm concerned, is Cruz. And we can do if Aldo loses his next one, then we can do Aldo Cruz. Like if Aldo fights the loser of Sandhagen, Song Yadong and loses, Aldo Cruz is still in your back pocket. You can go to that whenever you want. So that's why I chose that.
Hey, maybe Cody Garbrandt if he beats Ronnie Yaya. Who knows? It's the bantamweight division's crazy. You could throw Aldo in there with a lot of different guys, and it makes sense. So let's move on to the first 2 fights of the main card. Lucie Pudilova told the naysayers of this fight with Wu Yanan being on the main card, hey, I'm going to get you to the top 3 fights a little bit quicker than you expected. Don't worry about it. It took her a little over 9 minutes, but vicious ground and pound gets it done. So I'm going to go with the timeline pick. Someone who got a finish earlier this month, Mayra Bueno Silva. Just seems like I mean, who else is it going to be, really? I mean, there's only like 20 active fighters in this division right now.
I want to make sure I get this right. Friends forever.
Yeah, let's go, baby.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it was that difficult, just because, like you said, there's not a huge number of other options. Um, but this seems very low hanging fruit. I mean, there aren't that many fighters. She is coming off a recent win, so the timelines match up. They both recently defeated Wu Yanan. It just seems to line up pretty well. So, yep, I'm with you.
Tyson Pedro had probably the least surprising result of the evening's festivities. He takes out Harry Hunsucker in 65 seconds. He's 2-0 since coming back. What's next for the city kickboxing standout at 205?
This is really difficult for me. Just because I don't know. It's hard for me to do like non-ranked light heavyweights because I can't think of any of them because it's mostly a sad morass of humanity. Uh, but I ultimately I have a name and I don't know that I even feel good about it if we're being honest. So I hope you've brought something better. I'm taking Kennedy in Chukwu. He's coming off the TK of Carl Roberson. I don't know. He also seems to be in that middle distance of light heavyweight, and they can hit people real hard. That's kind of watch two action figures smash together. Let's do it.
This might be a little high on the totem pole, but I feel like, and I like this guy a lot. I feel like he's ranked way too highly in my eyes, but he's just super fun. And I feel like no matter how this fight plays out and where it goes, it's going to be super fun. If it goes to the ground, it's going to be crazy. And if it stays standing, we're going to find ourselves a highlight reel either way. But we've seen him fight the Ike Villanuevas and the Harry Hunsuckers of the world. I just want to see him fight. I just want to see him fight Paul Craig. I just think that's a fun ass fight. Those two guys is just fun.
Mike, he's fought Paul Craig before,
right? But I'm talking like 2022 Paul Craig.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because you tell the listeners they have to stipulate.
Yeah.
So I want to
Those
be
two
clear.
guys.
Paul Craig, I was one of the first guys I looked at just for the rematch, and then I was like, I somewhat agree that he's a little too highly ranked, but then I was like, that still seems unfair to Paul Craig. So even though it's Paul Craig has a chance to get his revenge, I don't know. Let's let Paul Craig let him have his day in the sun just a little bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, Tyson Pedro against anybody's fun. Tyson's a personality. Just put him over.
No
give
real wrong answers
him a shot.
here.
Give him a shot. It's the first fight was like 5 years ago, and Paul finished him with strikes. But I don't know. I kind of would like to see it again. So let us move on to the wild card pick, where we will select one fighter from the card that we have not match made for yet. And we'll do so right now. It could be somebody from the prelims, win or lose, someone who was not victorious in the first two main card fights. The options are endless, Jed. Who you got?
I don't love this, if I'm being honest, just because this should have been very easy because it should have been Alexander Romanov versus take your pick of top 7 heavyweights. My personal answer probably would have been Derek Lewis because that's Derek Lewis's job now, is to just be the stepping stone to the top of the division. And then Romanov went and lost. Granted, I want to be extremely clear, he was robbed. But he wasn't robbed. We talked about it a lot in the post show. Like, there's no reasonable world where Romanov doesn't get a 10-8 for the first round. So that fight should have been a draw. But spiritually, we should punish fighters who have 5 minutes of cardio. So puts me in a weird position. I ultimately I did pick Romanov to be my wild card, even coming off the loss, because I just can't possibly care about what Marcin Tabora does next. So I'm not going to matchmake for that. So I ultimately was like, F it. Let's do 2 heavyweight grapplers. I know it maybe doesn't make sense from how the other one's on a big win streak and Romanov now coming off a loss, but give me Spivak Romanov. Let's see. Both dudes can mix it up a little bit on the feet. Spivak certainly has a cardio advantage. Romanov maybe a better grappler. It's a fight I wouldn't have done because I don't want to kill off a rising prospect. I had Romanov won, but since he lost, F it, let's just do it.
I thought we were going to have a rare friends forever wild card moment. I'm
That
going
would have
with
been
Romanov
very.
as well. And look, this is not going to be a popular pick, but after last night, I'm uniquely intrigued by this fight because it
Oh
could
my
be really
God, you're
weird and
not
bizarre.
doing it.
I'm doing
Oh,
it.
you absolute
I'm doing
monster.
it. Sign me up for Alexander Romanov versus Derek Lewis, Jed. And here's why.
I love it. I love it.
We know how that first round could go. It could go really, really
Fail
bad for
upwards,
Derek.
baby. Fail upwards.
However, Derek Lewis is really good at somehow with very little technique, like actual mixed martial arts technique, at getting back to his feet when he's taken out against pretty much anybody. Did it with Curtis Blades. And if this fight stays standing, yeah, Romanov might crack him a little bit in the first 5, but Lewis would have the striking advantage for sure. And if this gets out of the first round, this fight is heading for a place that could be really interesting, kind of hilarious, and a lot of fun. So
the mythical
give me that
third
one.
round Derek Lewis.
Yeah.
Mythical third
round
Derek Lewis versus a man who apparently gasses out when he's in control for 5 full minutes. Like,
I'm doing it. It makes sense. It's a fight Derek Lewis could definitely win after watching what I watched last night. And it's a fight Romanov can win after watching what I've watched in the past. I will say, I will give an honorable mention. The Jared Gordon, Patty Pimblett choice gets that because it's not the call out. It's just, I want to give some shine to Jared because of what it means in his eyes after his win, trying to use the fight to promote mental health advocacy. And I'm sure in the back of his mind, he wants the rub too, although that doesn't seem to be the most important thing. But give me Romanov Lewis. Give me all that smoke so we can get a few more answers about both guys, Romanov specifically.
You know what's sad is I had hoped you would have been the bad person and done the thing that I thought about doing for Romanov, because I think it's actually the fight that happens. They're going to do Shamil Abdurakhimov, and it's just going to be awful. It's going to be the worst heavyweight fight of all time. And that's for sure what's going to happen. But I love your answer better. I hope they do it. Screw it. Fail upwards. I think José Aldo should get a title fight. Like I said it last night. I was like, they gave him a title fight off a quote unquote loss before. F it, do it again. Who cares? I'm pro everyone failing upwards on this card.
Yeah, so it'll be fun. It'll be crazy. We'll get to some listener picks. I'll get to some DMs real quick. We'll react to those. And to react to the Shamil Abdurakhimov pick, if he beats Shamil, he's going to fight Derek Lewis anyway. So we'll just skip the middleman and just get to Derek Lewis because that's usually what happens. So let me just run through these. We'll react, and then we're going to take just nothing but your comments and matchmaking suggestions the rest of the way. So Gareth Reingold gave a pre-fight pick and only one pick altogether. And he suggests that Paulo Costa signed with one championship to fight Roberto Soldic. Which, who the hell is not going to watch the hell out of that fight?
I mean, okay. Why is he fighting Roberto Soldic?
Because why not? Roberto signed with one. He's going to fight at 85.
Are we just disrespecting the god? Henny to hitter?
The number one contender fight.
I mean, I guess sure if you want, but it seems Soldic is like a welterweight middleweight versus RDR is a middleweight light heavyweight, which is like that fight just makes way more sense to me to do that one. I mean, fundamentally, I guess I don't have like a huge issue with it, but I would rather see RDR Costa than Soldic Costa.
All right, let's go to Dad Jackson. Losa versus Mickey Gall. Woodson versus Landwehr. Tyburra versus Pavlovich. Pedro versus Craig. Merab versus Cejudo. Gordon versus D1 Jacasey. And then he responded.
I actually don't mind that fight.
Yeah. And then he responded with, that was effing nuts, dude, from the main event. Leon. And then he goes with Leon versus Conor, live from the O2 Arena. And then Tom Aspinall versus Muhammad Usman for the co-main. I'm sure he's joking about both of those selections. And then he said, imagine if Mazda gets a big win sometime soon and him and Leon finally settle the beef with the title involved. I know it's not even close to happening. I would disagree with that too, but still be a fun buildup and a fun fight for sure. And then go Usman versus Shavkat. I don't even know. This shit is bananas. Okay. Tristan Gordat, Paulo Costa versus Darren Till, Cheeto versus Merab, Pudilova, Jocelyn Edwards.
Darren Till was my backup for if he stayed in the UFC. I was going to do Darren Till behind Andre Muniz, but
yeah. Tyson Pedro versus Azamat Mirzakhanov. By the way, it's category rules, and if your picks are crap, we're going to call you out on them. Canadian Bryant, good morning, Mike and AK. Hope you're both doing great this morning. I'm sure he met you, Jed. Wild card, José Aldo versus Dominic Cruz. Tyson Pedro versus the winner. Yes, the winner of Iwan Kuchalaba versus Johnny Walker. Pudilova versus Egger. Costa versus the winner of Strickland Cannonier. Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman 3. Oh my God, I was half asleep and now I'm awake. Sorry, Hamzat. You could fight Colby, I guess. Okay. John Ray.
I think most of those are okay.
Yeah.
I don't think Colby will fight Hamzat, but I could be wrong. I also just don't think Colby's fighting because he's had suffered brain trauma in an outside the cage incident, allegedly. So feels difficult if you're making that claim to then go get in a professional punchy, sporty combat thing.
Yes. John Ray with the most popular pick for Amir Albazi, which is Tim Elliott. Gordon versus Pichel.
That's really good. I like that
one. Gordon versus Vince Pichel. Pichel's injured. That's why he's not fighting October 1st. So we'll see when he can come back. Tybura versus Derek Lewis, calling for the rematch, although he didn't specify. If AK was here, he'd probably call you out. I'm trying not to be a grump today. Pedro versus Nchukwi. Dvalishvili versus Dvalishvili versus Dillashaw, win or lose. Hayes III. Pedro looks like he's being built slowly. I'll go with Marcin Prachnio. Go ahead.
Let's take a T. I just want to ask you, how do you feel about Dvalishvili versus Dillashaw, win or lose? Because certainly if Dillashaw wins, I can see it seems unlikely just because if Dillashaw wins, he's just fighting the winner of Jan O'Malley, because if Jan wins and Dillashaw wins, they will absolutely put that dude back in a title fight. But how do you feel if otherwise? If Dillashaw loses, do you think that fight makes sense for Dvalishvili? I think that's honestly, if Dillashaw loses, I think an Aldo fight maybe makes a lot more sense there.
The Cruz fight makes sense. There's lots of fights that make sense. I don't hate it. I don't think Merab could get a title shot. If Jan wins, it's close.
The issue is, what the hell do you do with Merab? It's why the Aldo booking was stupid as hell in the first place.
Yeah.
Because one, Aldo should have been fighting for the title. Two, even if Merab wins, he was going to win like this. So it's not going to be a win that puts him over. And especially even if somehow it is a win that puts him over, he's not going to fight for the belt because he flat out will not fight the guy who has the belt. So it's a very weird situation. And I don't know what you do with Merab realistically. I picked the Cheeto Jan thing, but I don't even feel good about that. I just don't know what the hell you do with Merab given the situation.
Hayes III. Pedro looks like he likes Marcin Prachnio. Tybura, I thought it was a draw, but I do think Tybura clearly took the last two rounds, so I can't hate on the decision too hard. I'll go with the Dacus Rosenstrike winner. Romanov, I'll go with the winner of Tanner Bozer Nascimento. Jared Gordon versus Joel Alvarez. Woodson Saldana. Run back all draws, or just learn from the extremely innovative organization that is BKFC and do an overtime round. The scoring for that fight was shit too, but we're trying not to be grumpy.
Run back all draws.
Losa versus Brahimage Albazi. I said the winner of this fight should get Alex Perez before, and I'll stick with it. Arichi Lang, Vince Morales, Altamirano, Jay Cadley. Edwards Usman, Costa, what a weird but awesome fight. I feel like the Cannonier Strickland winner is an obvious choice. Rockhold, I'm not 100% sold he's done, but I think there are ranked dudes he could beat. Merab, I really want to see him in a 5-rounder. It's tough to make definitive calls at the moment. With not knowing how everything else will play out, I'll go with the Sandhagen Song winner. Although this is definitely tough to watch. I don't know if it would have helped, but it looks bad in hindsight that his coach didn't just tell him he was behind, which is an interesting point because I believe they told him he was up 2 rounds heading into the third. And he said, let's do the Dominic Cruz fight before it's too late. And then he wants a Otno point. He said this is after 276, I believe. For Brad Riddell after the Jalen Turner loss, I just want to have another opportunity for a fun fight. So I'll go with Renato Moicano, and that is happening at UFC 281. So you know what? I'll give you the damn Otno point. Nicely done. Kevin from Duval. Pedro versus Nchukwu. Arichi Lang versus Ronnie Lawrence. Jared Biagin. Edwards.
Dude, I love it. The Nchukwu. That pick's coming around. People are on board.
Yes. Nchukwu and Tafon and Chukwi are very positive ones. Let's see. Leon Edwards will defend first against Chimaev in Europe. Usman will come back next year and get an immediate title shot. Covington can be on standby for all these fights. Costa resigns and fights Whitaker, win or lose, at UFC Paris. Aldo versus Cejudo in his comeback fight. Big name will entice Cejudo. Can even be done at 145.
Don't do it, Mike. Yeah, don't do it. Don't talk about. Don't even read listener picks. I know you love your fans, and you should. They're great people. I won't call them the best fans in the world, but they're very, very good fans. Great fans. Don't indulge them.
I'm not
because Henry Cejudo isn't fist fighting anybody until we see him in the cage actually fist fighting somebody.
Pudilova, Myra Bueno Silva, Romanov, Ivanov, Jared Gordon, CDF, Woodson versus Saldana 2. Drew Hilty, Leon got that dog. Carlos Diego Ferreira.
Oh, okay. So that's not an abbreviation I'm accustomed to using.
Now you have it. So you're welcome.
Okay.
Leon got that dog in him. Costa, this is who is this? This is Drew Hilty. Costa, man, is a wild card, but if he stays in the UFC, do Costa versus Strickland, win or lose, the build will be silly. Merab versus Jan, win or lose. I guess he's so. Merab versus Jan, win or lose. I guess he's hoping to be Aljo's bodyguard from now on. There you go. Oh God. And then you said Tyson Pedro versus Ed Herman. I'm pretty sure he's still in the UFC. Tyburra, Spivak 2, Amir Albazi, David Dvorak. And then he has a rant. All right. Jesus, there needs to be some sort of standardized black and white for enforcing fouls. I'm sick of the refs picking and choosing when to enforce the rules. You get one verbal warning if you commit a foul, and the next time you commit a foul, whether it was what you were warned for originally or something different, a point should be taken. Jed, go ahead and wax poetically about rules and cheating and fence grabs, because we say this all the time. People hated on this at first, but now a lot of you are jumping on board, and you should be jumping on board. But
yeah,
just say what you have to say, because I agree.
If you're hating on it, you're just wrong. It's just all it is. Like, I don't know how else to make the argument. It is, cheating is illegal, so you shouldn't do it. It's very, very simple. And there shouldn't be any verbal warnings, because they all get verbal warnings. It happens before the fight in the back room. It's literally a fighters get a warning back there. It's like, hey, let's go over the rules to make sure you, a professional fist fighter, don't do a bad thing. And they go out. And then if you're in the main event, you get another one, because they bring you into the center and it's like, hey, do you have any questions? Do you have any questions? Fight clean, fight hard, fight fair, go after it. You get all the warnings in the world. And I guess what? You don't need them, because in the NFL, the refs don't go back in the locker room and are like, all right, does anyone know what a face mask is? Let's talk about it. You can't do that. And then if you do it, they don't slap your hand away from the face mask and like, don't you do that again. They penalize you because it's illegal. Every fist fighter should be illegal all the time, 100,000%. Kamaru Usman cheated a bunch in their fight. Leon Edwards cheated a bunch in their fight. I think Usman did a lot more than Edwards, but it happens. I fundamentally believe that if you are a mixed martial arts coach and you are not teaching your fighters to cheat, it's not cheating. If they don't penalize you, it's not cheating. It is playing within the bounds of the established criteria, because if they allow it to happen, it is legal by definition. So especially if Herb Dean's reffing you, because who the hell knows if that dude will ever take a point in his entire career. So cheat all the time, cheat every time. If you are, it's funny to say that Saldana should have cheated, because he did cheat really, really aggressively. But like when he was in that buggy choke, if you're in a buggy choke, you're not getting out of a buggy choke. But if he just, poked a dude in the eye for a little bit, probably gets a break, probably like, hey, don't do it. And then he's out. Like, it's just cheat, just cheat all the time, cheat every time. Kamaru Usman blatantly grabbed the fence and held himself up as a result of that in the middle of that fight. Like, cheat. It's never going to hurt you. It's only going to positively benefit you.
Yep. Until things change, grab the fence, do whatever you got to do, because they're not going to call you. They're just not going to call it. It's insane.
There's no reason. I genuinely don't understand why the referees and people, whoa, it's taking a point is harsh. Cool. Don't cheat. Like, it's just that. It's not. I agree. It is harsh. Khabib Nurmagomedov never cheated in his entire career. I believe I've watched his entire career, and I believe he at one point in time was warned for holding shorts. And that is the only verbal warning he got in his entire career. Because you don't have to. Cheating is a choice. It just is. Like, if every fighter came in knowing that if I cheat, this will really, really adversely affect me, probably wouldn't happen nearly to the extent that it does.
Yeah. And I'm not even asking like for the first fence grab or two to take a point away. What I'm asking for is to stop action. And if it's on like a takedown attempt and he doesn't get the takedown, the ref should stop the fight and it should be an automatic takedown and give him, at least put him in full guard, 100%. But it's not happening. So grab the fence, grab the glove, poke the eyes, kick him in the ding ding. It ain't gonna matter because it ain't gonna get called. It might get called for a pause, but no points are being taken away. It's just, it's stupid, but that's the world we live in. Let's move on to probably driving people around. Costa Darren Till. I feel like Costa didn't gain that much from beating a guy like Rockhold, who is definitely a legend in his own right, but hadn't fought in 3 years. It was aging. I think a fight with Till would be a great matchup for both of them. They haven't fought each other, would produce fireworks. Rockhold, thanks for a great career. Kind of a doo-doo pick here. Tyson Pedro, Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, because Oleksiejczuk is now a 185er, so can't really do that there. Tyburra versus Pavlovich. I feel like there's not much else for him to do. Jairzinho's going against Dawkins. He just lost to Volkov. Aspinall is hurt. It feels like Pavlovich is the only place for him to go at this point. Romanov versus Spivak. I think this is another good test for Romanov, someone who's lighter than Tyburra, but fights in the same manner in a fight that would test him, but I'd favor him in. Gordon versus Guram Kutateladze. I feel like Gordon has a lot of hype after detaining someone with a bat video. Step up in competition in Guram would be a good fight, and Gordon's pressure makes any fight enjoyable. Losa versus Brian Battle would be fun, and he likes Amir Albazi versus Manel Kopp. If you want a black belt, go face him. Marcus, let's see. If
can we just recognize that flyweight freaking rules?
Yeah, flyweight is
like every Albazi's gotten like 10 different dudes thrown out, and all of them are fire. Like Alex Perez, hell yeah, sign me up. Manel Kopp, hell yeah, sign me up.
Yep.
And betting the under on any of these fights, hell yeah, sign me up.
Let's see what Marcus has. Does he have anything different? Richie Lang, Douglas Silva de Andrade, Tyson Pedro versus Ihor Porteria, Pudilova, Jessica Rose Clark. Interesting. Paulo Costa versus what about Paulo Costa versus Dricus du Plessis? Or is that too soon for Dricus?
I don't think it's too soon. I don't hate it. If he's going to stay around, I think if you're doing that, I still just would prefer Muniz because Muniz deserves the launch up the rankings a lot more. But I don't hate that fight if that's it's odd. I just sometimes forget about DDP. And I don't really know how good he actually is, but I don't hate that fight if you make it.
That fight is just insanity. So I would watch the hell out of it.
Well, every DDP fight is insanity.
Guy's nuts. That'd be a really fun fight.
That's probably the most fun fight you can do with Paulo Costa right now. Like I would be willing to say that would be the most fun matchup for him. So good choice. I like that. Whoever came up with that one.
Like Darren Till and Sean Strickland would be fun, like in the build, but the best
Sean Strickland would
fight
be hilarious.
Would be DDP. Yeah,
Sean Strickland fight would be hilarious in the build.
I like that pick. Dylan, hey Mike, hoping you and AK/Jed are having nice summer's end. My picks: Edwards versus Covington. I mean, why not? UFC gives fighters coming off of losses title fights all the time. Give Usman time to regroup. I just don't.
Also, why did he say coming off losses?
Because Covington came off a loss. Is coming off a loss.
Didn't he just beat Jorge Masvidal?
Oh, you're right. I forgot about that.
I was going to say, am I taking crazy pills?
You're right. You're
really convinced right. Covington is coming off a win.
I totally forgot that fight happened outside of what happened after
because everything else happened.
Yeah, true that. My bad. See? There you go. Costa versus the loser of Adesanya Pereira. Dvalishvili versus the winner of Song Sandhagen. Love to see him dominate strikers that have not even close to the level of takedown defensive Aldo. And then he says Aldo versus Cruz. Now is the time, Dana. Just effing do it. 4 Quarter Sports. Merab versus Cejudo or TJ Dillashaw if he loses to Sterling. Aldo versus Sandhagen. Yadong loser. Pedro, Fabio Charant. Doo-doo pick. Sharon has to be released at this point. I'm 99.9% sure he is. Tyburra versus the winner of Christakis Jairzinho. Romanov versus Sakai. Saldana David Onama. Woodson versus Charlie Ontiveros. Maybe he's still in the UFC. I doubt it, but I think Ontiveros is a lightweight anyways, unless Woodson wants to go to 155. I don't know. That's just a bad knockout loss waiting to happen for Ontiveros, I think. Losa versus Witt. Arichi Lang versus Miles Johns. That's fun. Altamirano versus Ode Osborne. That is also fun. So I like that. Thomas Collins.
Flyweight rules.
It does. Thomas Collins. In Alexander's absence, I'm sending my matchmaking suggestions here. Unfortunately, I'm probably not going to make the live show. Firstly, as a Brit, I'm proud to see Leon win the belt. It's amazing to see him achieve this. Let's get on to the matchmaking. Leon Edwards versus the winner of Bilal Muhammad versus Sean Brady, though we all know it will be the trilogy. I think Usman will take a while off and we can have a fresh title fight either a rematch of a controversial no contest or an undefeated welterweight contender. All are amazing fights, but please can we do it in the UK next February? Boy, oh boy. That's a tough hang.
Where is this gentleman from?
I don't know. As a Brit, he's a Brit. He said
I would bet my life he's from the UK because while I respect it, this is please do not throw Leon into a title fight at home against Khamzat Chimaev. That is, please don't do that to us. We did it. We got our second champion ever. Let him defend at home in a fight that is winnable. And Khamzat, I do not believe is winnable for Leon.
Yeah.
So I respect it. I would love it because I think Sean Brady's awesome. I don't think I am confident saying there's a 0% chance that that fight happens next.
Yeah, I'm with you. Merab versus Pantoja at flyweight. I think Sterling will beat TJ and therefore won't be fighting Merab anytime soon. I think he will drop down to flyweight, and given that Figgy versus Barreto is unlikely to happen to early next year, so it's going to be a while before he can fight, giving him a number one contender fight versus Pantoja to see whether he gets the flyweight title shot. Now, Merab has talked about moving down to 125, so
I don't think I buy that he can do that.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's not a small human being.
Yeah, he's not.
He is very thick.
He's felt.
He was thicker than José. And I didn't think José would be able to make 135, frankly. So Rob knows his body better than I do, but I think that's awful. He should not do that. And I hate that. I hope that doesn't happen. Let Sterling move up if that's the blocker. That's a much better choice.
Not a great start. I don't hate this next one, though. I actually think this is very well what could happen. Marcin Tybura versus Gelten Almeida, who I assume beat Shamil Abdurrahimov at UFC 279. Gives him a new test. I also think Marcin needs one more win before fighting up again. I could definitely see the UFC putting that fight together because I think Gelten Almeida is a freaking problem. Finally, Alexander never gave me a shout out for some check the tapes, and I'd be grateful if you could give it to me for Merab versus Aldo, which I called after UFC 266 and Merab's win against Marlon, and Tyburra versus Romanov, which I called after Romanov's last win. I mean, I'll leave that to AK. I think this is the last one. I think it's an anonymous picker. It's a user account with a whole bunch of numbers that I'm not going to read.
It was me.
This is you. Leon Usman 3 in Birmingham. Costa versus Vittori Rob.
Dude, that would be awesome. If they did it in Birmingham, that would be sick. That would rule. It won't happen. They will do it in London, but it would rule if they did it in Birmingham.
Oh, I like this one. Do it at MSG. Pedro versus Negomarianu. That's a fun ass fight.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Do we have anything new here? Romanov versus Alexei Oleinik. Is Alexei Oleinik still going to fight people? I think so. He just got a submission win in Jacksonville. Yeah, but that was his what was his 60th career win or whatever, or 50th. I think he's still doing the damn thing. He might be booked. He should have retired with that win because he's 107, and you can't Ezekiel joke people at some point in time. And I mean, if he still wants to fight, sure. I actually think that's as good an option as you can do for Romanov, but come on, man, just retire. That one's okay. You're 107 years old. Go out on a win. Nobody goes out on top in this sport, and you did it, Alexi. You did it. Leave. Saldana versus Melsick, Woodson versus Ocho Peterson. Do we have anything else? Arichi Lang versus Brian Kelleher. That's a fun fight. And I think we're good. And then I guess the name is Toby Kinsella because he screenshotted Helwani's tweet. Name one result that'll happen today that will be considered a shock surprise. And he said Leon Edwards KO left high kick. So there you go. Good call.
Nice receipt.
Nicely done. All right. So if you got picks in the chat, let's go. We're going to go for like 10 more minutes. I'm going to try to scroll up a little bit and I'll get to as many as I can. But if you put them in earlier, spam them now and we'll get after it. So Tyburra versus Ivanov, because it's probably what will happen. Merab versus Song Yudong from Fearless Joe Banzai.
Is that doo-doo? Because Song has a fight.
I know, but maybe this is a
I know. I'm trying to represent AK.
I get you. Lil Gloom, Edwards versus Masvidal. Let's see. Where are we at? Let's see. Rockhold's not coming back because he won't get another marquee fight anytime soon. I don't know if that's true or not, but
I think if he comes back, he gets a marquee fight. It's Luke freaking Rockhold. What are we talking
Look at the numbers this guy put up this week. Everyone was cared about what he's doing. Merab versus O'Malley. There's just no way that fight happens, at least unless it's for a belt. 3-piece of the soda versus fish and chips in London. Okay. I mean, listen, I see there is a very real possibility that fight happens if Usman takes time off. Yes, Tony Ferguson versus Li Jing Liang was booked for UFC 279. Jed, your response?
I think this is an awful booking, but what do I care? I think Tony's washed, so it's fine. But it's when a surprise booking happens, you want to go, that's weird. Kind of into it. I just go, that's weird, and that's a lot. I don't have the second thought for this. Like, what does this do for who? Why is this happening? What's the build up? This feels entirely like they just didn't know what to do, and the timelines matched up, so they said, screw it. Like, I think you could have used Tony Ferguson 100 different ways. I don't think this one is a particularly good one, but
like when he tweeted out the picture of the bat signal, like that's exactly what it was. They're like, this card really stinks.
Yeah,
we need a star on it. And
yeah, it was like, let's put a dude that people will like on it. And then I guess the Leech was the only one around who was ready to go in a shortish time frame. Like, it's just a super weird fight, and it's not even one that I think is particularly fun. Don't mind at all Tony going up to welterweight. I think that that's very, very viable, to try and breathe new life into his career, but it's just a super weird fight. I'm not into it.
Yeah, especially after the brutal knockout loss to Michael Chandler. It could be really rough night because Lee could freaking crack. Masvidal don't deserve a title shot. When has that mattered in the UFC? It doesn't matter. It's a big money fight. It'll do well on pay-per-view. It will sell out. If they do it in the UK, no doubt about it. Leon Masvidal in March. Did Leon steal knockout of the year? I think so.
Oh, that's not even a question.
Yeah.
He has it, and there's no one who will take it from him. I struggle to see a war unless Nate Diaz knocks out Khamzat Chimaev with a flying knee or something like that. And even then, there just ain't no way. The context of that has a very legitimate case to being the greatest KO in the history of the UFC. Like a very legit case for that. There ain't no way anyone's taking KO of the year from that.
Conor don't deserve a title shot. Same freaking point.
Conor doesn't, but I think that one's a lot funnier than Masvidal.
That is funnier, and
it's a way funnier thing to just be like, "Hey, Leon, England versus Ireland, let's do it." It's way funnier.
Yeah, and I do think there's a very good chance that if Charles Oliveira beats Islam Makhachev, that he's got to fight Conor anyways. So I think Conor could very well get a title shot, because again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's what sells.
Conor can fight. Yeah, can fight Islam too.
How about this, Jed? I mean, this is one that I called for on the rise of Romanov, and it just never got put together. Romanov versus Arlovsky. Arlovsky, I believe, is booked. I forget who he's booked against.
I'm almost certain you're right, because he booked a fight that I remember not liking.
He is fighting at He's fighting Marcos
Marcos
Rogerio de
Rogerio de
Lima
Lima.
on October 29th.
I would.
Let's see.
If something falls apart there, I'd be okay with that.
Matt Schnell is also booked. Albazi versus Schnell would be fun if that actually happens.
Be incredibly fun.
Who is Schnell fighting? It's a fun. I remember. I forget.
Romanov
There's so many.
Elevation. Somebody posted in the chat.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Romanov versus Stairmaster, my guy.
He's fighting Mateus Nicolau in December, which is a fun.
Yeah, it was the fight he called for. Got the quick turnaround. It's why you call for fights, fighters. Close mouth, don't get fed.
No, he doesn't deserve a title fight, but Edwards owes him a 3-piece of the soda. It's criminal to book Tony in this bout against the Leech. A lot of Merab picks, a lot of them pretty much the same. Pedro versus Menefield. Menefield, I believe, is booked as well. I believe he just got booked. Like, it just recently happened.
Oh, Tony Fury, you, as a man who has so much salt about Merab, you, sir, you're a salty, salty man.
Yes. Menefield's fighting Misha Serkinov October 15th. Tyburra versus Tuivasa if he loses to Gan. I mean, it would make sense, but I just want to see Tai Tuivasa just fight like hammer and tongs sorts of strikers.
Don't do that fight. Let's have fun with Ty. Ty's fun. Let's not. And you know who isn't fun? Marcin Tabora. He just never has been. It's just what that is.
I was thinking it would be Kevin Holland, I guess, for Tony, but maybe they get him on 279.
See, no, that fight makes way more sense. Like, that is actually matchmaking. Whoever that is, you're a substantially better person than whoever the hell put this Tony fight together. Tony, Kevin Holland, that is a fight that I exactly did the thing I said. I would have never thought about it. It was never like, oh, this should happen. But as soon as you say it, I'm like, oh, weird. But okay, I'm kind of into that. Like, let's see what that's about. That's a way better fight.
Yes. I thought maybe they'd get Holland versus Wonderboy on this card or something, because that would make sense too. There's two names that are draws.
Dude, and Tony versus Wonderboy is better. There's so many better fights.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Tony's on this card for two reasons. One, to just boost the stock of the card in some way because he's a star. And two, we have two guys who it's going to be tough to, I mean, I think both guys will fight September 10th, but let's just say like something happens and Hamzat can't make it over. They'll sell the shit out of Tony Ferguson versus Nate Diaz as the new main event.
Yeah,
so this is a backup. He's the backup. Tony versus Hamzat, please don't allow that to happen. But Tony versus Nate, I'd be fine with, and you could sell that as a pay-per-view. Yeah. Especially at this point. Let's see what we're asked here. I gotta ask you, stoked for House of Dragons tonight? Not my thing. Are you a Game of Thrones guy?
Yeah. It's supposed to be really good. Fire and Blood, which is the book that the show is going to be based off of, was decent. It was very odd. It'll be it's not like a direct one-to-one thing to make, just because of the way that book is structured. It's kind of written like a history book. It's different. But the reviews early on are that it's very good. I have hope that it will be good, because the problem with Game of Thrones was that while they had source text, Game of Thrones was really good. But the Benioff and Homeboy aren't good at writing. Like, they are just not good at it. And as soon as they lost source text, they lost the ability to write a good television show. This has source text, and I have a lot of faith that it will be pretty entertaining.
Winner of Conor versus Mazda for the welterweight belt.
I mean, I don't think that the Conor Masvidal fight would happen, but if it does, the winner of that for sure gets to fight for a welterweight title if they want to.
Wild 2 champs lost their belts in the last minute in the 5th round in the last couple months. Fights they were both winning, by the way. Like, yeah, Glover Teixeira, same sort of thing. Although that fight was a lot more
very different, but yes, very wild.
What about Michael Chandler? Chandler's fighting Poirier either November or December. The date is the only thing being worked on at this point. But yeah, Masvidal will have to wait. Maybe. Again, the only one that can change the course of a trilogy fight is Kamaru Usman. If Usman's like, listen, I need like 9 months, I just want to take some time away, Masvidal is in the conversation. There's no doubt about it. I don't know if he gets it, if Hamzat just rolls Nate, but we'll see. Usman doesn't need to fight again. He can wait for a rematch. I agree. We're going that route. That's the route we go unless Kamaru wants to do something else. Albazi versus Snell is good. Colby, if they somehow booked Colby versus Leon, who wins?
I think
Colby
Colby
wins. Yeah.
But I'd be interested. Certainly the way that fight happened, I think it's Colby, but it's a good fight. I would watch it.
Nate by sub. Woodson versus the Jordan Wood winner, and Aldana versus the loser. I mean, Saldana probably won that fight, but I don't know. It was a weird fight. I actually like the idea of them just running that one back because like they're not like vying for titles or anything. They're not holding up anybody else. Like if you want to run that one back and do it right, like I'm cool with that. Bigger upset. Holly Holm KOs Ronda Rousey by head kick or Leon KOs Usman by head kick?
I mean, it's very clearly Usman by head kick just because a lot of people picked Rousey, and I know a lot of people actually picked Leon in this, but Holly's head kick came after beating the brakes off Rousey to a point that it was like very clear what the outcome was going to be. Leon's came after not getting the brakes beat off him, but losing convincingly. I think that certainly the home KO is more significant historically in terms of what that meant for the sport. But yeah, I would say it's very clearly the Leon's comeback KO.
Schnell got booked that fast, yes, but the fight's in December, so it's not like they're fighting in September. So he's got a lot of time to kind of clear the cobwebs from that insane fight. Mike Perry versus Jake Paul. I mean, we'll see what Jake's gonna do because he says he's fighting in October against a boxer. I have no friggin' idea. Shavkat versus the winner of Bilal versus Brady. Maybe the loser.
I think it's very likely that I think I agree with Jabba. I think that's the fight that happens because the winner of Bilal Brady is at least one away, and I think Shavkat just kind of makes sense in that regard.
Tony versus Verdum, long overdue. Let's see. I think we got a couple more. I'm just scrolling through here.
Dude, Verdum Rockhold. Remember when that was a thing?
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
See a
lot of Tony talk. I know I'm not Ariel. I don't claim to be Ariel. I'm my own man.
I'm not Ariel either, guys.
Yeah, Sarah TKO GSP it's definitely Sarah. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Sarah beating George St. Pierre is one or two in the greatest upsets of all time. It's almost certainly one, but I'm willing to hear the argument for Juliana Pena over Amanda Nunes.
Merab misses moment per Dana. I agree. It wasn't one that it's just like, oh, we have to give Merab a title fight. I mean, the whole thing with Aldo kind of like screwed the pooch on that anyways.
It ruins
which is good. Good for him. I mean, good for him. He wants to be a good teammate. So
oh yeah, I'm not saying call out Aljo. It's just like what can he do? He can't. If he had flying triangle armbar José, he can't call for a title fight because his friend has the belt. It's one of those situations that happens, and it's really tough to navigate.
There's one other comment I want to see, but it's too high up. But it got a lot of chatter here. Conor versus Gaethje. I know how highly you think of that fight, and I would love to see that someday. I don't know if that's what happens. Things would have to dominoes would have to fall in certain ways for that to happen. I could see a very strong world where Justin Gaethje fights Rafael Fiziev next because I just think the timelines will line up. Similar surgeries. I just think it's a fun fight. Makes sense to give Fiziev a little bit of a bump up and a rub, and who's going to complain about that fight? But I know how highly you regard a potential Conor McGregor versus Justin Gaethje fight. And for those who have not heard this rant of yours about how much you adored the idea of this fight, wax poetically before we get out of here.
I don't think it's a rant. It's just the obvious fight to make. Like, I'm okay if it doesn't happen because it's a fight you can make at any point in time. Both men would take it. It will be great. It's the best fight. It is the most entertaining fight on paper in the history of the sport, bar none. I fundamentally do not think you can show me a fight on paper and be like, this is better than that. Their styles clash in such a fun way. Both of them are bonus machines. Gaethje, I don't know what it's at right now based on the Oliveira fight, but at one point, Gaethje's first 7 fights, he had 9 bonuses in the UFC. Conor's exactly the same way. They're in cage product. Whatever you think of Conor McGregor, he is undeniably a thrilling fighter to watch. And Justin Gaethje is the most exciting fighter in the history of the sport to watch. You put those two dudes together and you make magic happen, because it would be awesome. If we don't ever get that before one or both men retire, it will be a travesty. And so I would love them to do it right now. But if you do Gaethje Fiziev and then that just comes down the line, I'm okay with it. But those guys got to go at it. They just have to.
Would love to see it. All right, we are getting out of here at this point. Thank you all for joining us. We went hour and 15. I said we'd go an hour. We gave you a little extra bonus time.
Let me just respond to a guy named Brandon who said Conor gets a bonus for being Conor. No, that's just wrong, dude. Like, you can hate him all you want. I have no big love for him, but you just can't pretend that dude is anything less than magic inside the cage. Like, point to me a boring Conor fight. The only answer is Max Holloway when he blew out his knee. And also, he managed to beat Max Holloway with the blown out knee. That win is aged by far the best of all of Conor's wins, save the Aldo one. You can not like the dude, but you can't disrespect the entertainment value he brings when he steps in the cage. It's through the roof.
Yep. There you go. Well said. I think that's a good way to go out. UFC 278 is going to give us lots to talk about for the next several days, maybe even longer, because for the first time in a long time, we don't have a UFC event this coming Saturday. The UFC is off next Saturday.
I don't know what this feels like. What do I do with my hands, Mike?
I don't know.
I don't know what to do.
You might have to drop another damn they were good this week. No bets barred. I don't know. There's lots we could do. We will have a BTL. We'll have the MMA hour tomorrow. Lineup to be announced tomorrow morning. MMA hour on Wednesday. Lots going on right here on the MMA Fighting YouTube channel. So thank you very much. Much appreciated for those listening after the fact of the podcast network. We love you guys. You're the best. For Jed Meshew, I am Mike Heck. We'll see you in a couple weeks after UFC Paris right here on to the next one. Godspeed, everybody.
Love you guys.